Putin's red lines were wiped out. The use of Western weapons in Russian cities,
Attention!
the Kerch Bridge, and militarization along Russian borders, none of these would be forgiven by the Kremlin. But for Moscow, the nightmare began on November 18th with a double catastrophe. On one side, Ukraine targeted the depths of Russian territory, which Putin had declared untouchable, with American ballistic missiles. On the other, a reckless Russian drone violated the airspace of NATO members, maximizing the risk of dragging the alliance directly into war. Poland and Romania immediately responded to the violations by scrambling Typhoon and F-16 fighter jets. The Russian people, however, had nothing to protect themselves with. As the sirens pierced the sky, a Russian citizen showed the traces left by the explosions with his camera. This moment became a turning point in the history of the war, because both Russia and Ukraine confirmed on the same day that ATACMS missiles had been used on Russian soil for the first time. The Ukrainian General Staff confirmed that they had carried out a precision strike on military targets inside Russia, using US-made ATACMS tactical missiles. According to open-source intelligence analysts, the target was a high-value location, such as a military base or the Pogonovo training ground. Russia's official propaganda, as usual, tried to conceal this destruction. The Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed that Ukrainian forces fired 4 US-made ATACMS missiles at the city of Voronezh. They claimed that the S-400 and Pantsir missile and weapon systems shot down all ATACMS missiles. However, photographs confirmed that the missile debris fell on a nursing home and orphanage in Voronezh, causing damage. Now a wave of panic and anger is rising among the public. People don't care whether the missiles were technically intercepted or not. The only thing they care about is that a city considered safe, like Voronezh, has been brought within missile range. Russian Milblog writers and the pro-war public expect a tougher retaliation from the Kremlin. They want hypersonic missiles to be launched in response to the ATACMS attack. If Putin does not retaliate, he will be seen as weak and cowardly by his core supporters. If he retaliates, he will multiply international tensions and the NATO risk. This risk was triggered once again on November 18th. That night, Russia launched 476 UAVs and 48 missiles at Ukraine. During these attacks, an apartment building in the city of Ternopil was hit, with reports of civilian casualties and injuries. But the real big mistake was made on NATO's Red Line. The Russian UAV flew approximately 8 kilometers between Periprava and Chilia in the Tulchia region. It then returned to Ukraine, crossed into Moldova, and re-entered Romania. This UAV violation led to the closure of important airports in eastern Poland, such as Rzeszów and Lublin. Following the violation, 2 German Eurofighter Typhoons and 2 Romanian F-16 fighter jets immediately took off from the Mihail Cogălnicianu and Câmpia Târzi air bases in Romania. Vladimir Putin was cornered. While NATO fighter jets patrolled, ATACMS missiles pounded Russian cities. Air defense systems like the S-400 couldn't stop the attacks. While Russia sold these systems to the world for billions of dollars, it couldn't protect its own territory. This is an irreparable blow to Putin's image and Russia's reputation in the global arms market. And do you know what really terrified the Kremlin? The moment when ATACMS targeted Russian cities. Putin's red lines were suddenly shattered. Moreover, ATACMS is a weapon that has already left a painful mark on Moscow's memory. That's why, when the attack on Voronezh and the name ATACMS are mentioned together, the target becomes increasingly clear: Crimea and the Kerch Bridge. Now let's take a look at Crimea's history with ATACMS. Crimea has been purged of Russian air power. There are no Su-35s or MiG-31s here anymore. Only empty Russian air bases remain. Putin was helpless, because the name of the threat was ATACMS. ATACMS missiles arrived silently, striking, and even the S-400s were helpless. Ukraine has now dominated the Crimean Peninsula with ATACMS missiles for a long time. Jankoy, Saki and Belbek air bases became targets for these missiles during the 2024 to 2025 period. Kiev actually signaled what it could do in the future, with these missiles starting in the summer of 2024 in Crimea. In May, the Belbek airbase was hit by American-made ATACMS missiles. High-resolution satellite images released after the attack showed that 2 MiG-31s and 1 Su-27 fighter jet were completely destroyed, while a MiG-29 was severely damaged. Deep burn marks and debris accumulation were observed in the refueling area, right next to the main runway. This area is known to be a vital point in terms of operational cycle. The same images also revealed dark stains not previously present in the parking areas and structural damage to the outer edges of the aircraft shelters. Open-source intelligence sources shared photos indicating that an S-300/S-400 air defense system stationed in Belbek had been hit. It is understood that the 92N6 gravestone radar, a critical radar component of the S-400, was targeted, and this loss is considered to have created a serious gap in Russian air defense integrity. After this attack, noticeable changes occurred in the layout of Belbek. The construction of heavily fortified shelters accelerated, aircraft were moved further inland, and the density of the parking area was deliberately reduced. Thus, the difference between the visible power of a base and its real power became apparent for the first time in such a clear manner. Russian forces on the peninsula suspect that the Ukrainian army could also carry out ATACMS attacks on the Kerch Bridge. If ATACMS missiles hit Kerch and destroy the bridge, this 19-kilometer logistics artery could spell the end for both Russian forces in Crimea and the Kremlin. Let's briefly discuss the power of ATACMS. ATACMS is an INS GPS-guided ballistic munition fired from M142 HIMARS and M270 MLRS launchers. The core body is 0.61 meters in diameter and approximately 4 meters long, shortening the interception window with a steep and rapid terminal dive angle after launch. The M39/M39 A1 variants carry M74 submunitions with a range of 165 to 300 kilometers and produce a wide area effect in open parking lots and around runways. The M48/M57 variants carry a single-piece, approximately 500-pound Class HE unitary warhead with a range of 270 to 300 kilometers and are suitable for hard targets such as fuel depots, radar nodes, command facilities, and bridge approaches. While HIMARS carries a single ATACMS in a pod, the M270 keeps 2 missiles ready at the same time. The shoot-and-scoot doctrine allows for rapid position change after firing. GPS-aided accuracy can reach the single-digit to low double-digit meter range, enabling sustained pressure in saturated wave configurations in layered air defense zones like Crimea. Meanwhile, the ATACMS strike on the Belbek base in Crimea was not an isolated incident. On April 17, 2024, the Jankoy airbase at the northern tip of Crimea was also targeted by a similar ATACMS attack. Known as one of the centers of frontline operations due to its proximity to Donbass, this base had long been on Ukraine's radar. Satellite images shared by Planet Labs after the attack confirmed extensive damage in the area south of the base where the S-400/S-300 batteries are located. At least 4 main components were completely destroyed. Burn marks in the surrounding area indicated that the attack had a wider impact. It became clear that the missiles were aimed not only at air defense systems, but also at Jankoy's 2 main runways. Hard ground areas east of the base were also targeted, with extensive burn marks in the area where some Pantsir S-1 or similar short-range air defense vehicles were located. Images indicated that these systems had either been directly hit or damaged by the explosions. ATACMS strikes against the peninsula continued during the summer months. In June 2024, ATACMS missiles targeted the NIP-16 Deep Space Communication Facility in the city of Vitino. This facility, now known as the 40th Separate Command and Measurement Complex, is part of the Titov Main Test and Space Systems Control Center, which is affiliated with the Russian Aerospace Forces. Built during the Cold War, the structure was used for years to track Soviet and Russian space missions. However, it is no longer just a monitoring facility, it also serves as an active center for command and control operations. The attack was carried out in 2 waves. In the first wave, the section containing approximately 20 large antenna dishes, the facility's most prominent feature, was targeted. Some of these dishes were arranged in large octagonal arrays and played a critical role in both military satellite communications and the management of space missions. Satellite imagery clearly showed burn marks across the large open area in this region, particularly over a short distance to the east. Similar signs of blackened soil and structural damage were detected north and east of the octagonal antenna array. The regular positioning of the burn areas indicates that the attack targeted specific radar electronic infrastructure. The strike on NIP-16 is not just physical damage. It represents a direct blow to Russia's military space architecture and long-range command capabilities. Another strike was recorded at another airfield in July 2024, indicating that all bases within range were under pressure. New satellite images around Saki showed fresh crater marks and burn marks in areas outside the facility. The story behind the arrival of the ATACMS that achieved these successes in Ukraine is also quite noteworthy. Volodymyr Zelensky announced to the public in 2023 that the US had provided ATACMS to the Ukrainian armed forces. This announcement was confirmed shortly thereafter by the US National Security Council. On the same day, Ukraine deployed this system in combat for the first time. 2 separate airports in Berdyansk and Luhansk were struck by short-range ATACMS missiles. Footage shared on social media showed at least 6 missiles being fired from the M142 HIMARS system. These first batches were mostly the 165-kilometer range M39A1 type, i.e., the short-range version. However, this step signified crossing a threshold in the profile of support the West was providing to Ukraine in the war. From that moment on, ATACMS became not just ammunition, but a geopolitical message and an element of strategic balance. In the months that followed, the shipment of missiles and the management of ammunition stocks were intensely debated in both Kyiv and Washington. In the spring of 2024, deliveries of advanced variants with a range of up to 300 kilometers began. The political limit set by the US during this period was clear: Ukraine could only use these missiles over its own occupied territories. In other words, attacks on Russia's mainland were not possible with these weapons. However, this situation did not last long. By early 2025, signs began to emerge that some of the ATACMS provided by the US to Ukraine included modified and upgraded long-range models. This development marked a critical threshold in the course of the war. Kyiv now had an effective and sustainable deterrent at its disposal, capable of precision strikes at greater distances. As the range increased, the map changed. If political will strengthens further and the US decides to deploy the PRSM family, the new generation derivatives of ATACMS, these systems with a range of 500 kilometers will reach a point where they threaten Russia's A2/AD networks deep within its territory. Command centers along the Crimea-Rostov line, logistics arteries around Kerch, missile radar systems, and air bases would now become fixed targets. This is because Russia's southern logistics depend on 2 main corridors, the Kerch Bridge and the railway road extending to the peninsula via Melitopol-Jankoy. ATACMS is not a direct one-shot, one-kill solution for Kerch. However, intermittent strikes on soft targets such as bridge approach ramps, railway junctions, signaling areas, fuel, supply storage, and locomotive parks can permanently reduce total capacity. Ukraine has already increased the cost of defending Kerch since the summer of 2024. The damage the bridge has sustained from previous attacks and repeated closures has demonstrated how risky the single artery dependency is. The ATACMS range also allows you to target the railway junctions through which cargo enters Crimea. This table shows us one simple truth. The war has now crossed an irreversible threshold. The arrival of ATACMS missiles on Russian soil, NATO violations involving the deployment of warplanes, the systematic destruction of air bases in Crimea, and the Kerch Bridge becoming an increasingly inevitable target. None of these are isolated incidents. They are all links in the same chain, showing the step-by-step collapse of Russia's southern front and logistical backbone. As Putin's red lines are being erased one by one, Ukraine has seized both military balance and psychological superiority with its high-precision, long-range strikes. As Russia's air defenses weaken, even its interior regions are no longer safe. The pressure on Crimea is increasing every month, and the Kerch Bridge is now not just infrastructure, but a symbolic target that will determine the fate of the war. The result is clear. The moment ATACMS entered the field, the map of the war and the political balance changed. In this new era, Russia can neither protect its bases in the south nor prevent the war from reaching its own doorstep. What follows is the rapid deepening of a process that the Kremlin, however hard it tries, can no longer hide. So, what are your thoughts on this? Please share your thoughts in the comments. To stay updated on new videos, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Thank you for choosing us.